Hi everyone, and welcome to this morning's 3 Pains of Training Compliance webinar. Today, myself, Dave, Marketing Manager, and Mandy, Product Specialist, we run through all the content for today. The main focus of today's webinar will be to explore the 3 most common pains health and safety professionals encounter when approaching the issue of training compliance. This webinar is completely interactive, so what I'm looking to get is as much of your input, more or less as many questions as possible that you will have on anything that's been brought up. There is a questions tab at the right hand side of your screen, so don't be afraid to send any questions whatsoever that is brought up today. What I will do is introduce you to my colleague Mandy, who's going to bring you through the majority of the content today. I'll be butting in with any of your questions, so you're going to hear from me a good bit. But so what I want to do is introduce you to Mandy, and Mandy is going to bring you through the majority of the content today.
Hi, welcome to the webinar. Glad to have you aboard. As Dave said, just please feel free to share as many of your questions that you might have, the more the better. And as Dave mentioned there today, what we're just really going to be focusing on is when we're working with clients, one of the things that we like to do is obviously understand where they're struggling with maybe their more manual or paper-based processes. And so today's webinar will be addressing 3 of the most common pains that we hear given over to us, and then how we can work to address those using a centralized software platform. So part of the whole common aspects that we get told or the common ways that people are managing their training records today, first and foremost would be your manual processes, so paper records, loads of filing cabinets, but more often than not it is Excel, so spreadsheets that might be spread across the business in shared folders or intranet systems, and these can typically result in some pretty heavy workloads for the health and safety team, as well as anyone else that's involved in the training management process, so maybe your HR department or managers, whatnot. And so what we're typically told that these can create within the business is kind of a blackout or a lack of visibility or oversight to who is really in compliance, and maybe a lack of confidence that your employees are really trained up the way that you would feel is best to help them mitigate the risk within the day-to-day activities. And so what that can usually roll on to create is maybe a bit of catch up with your scheduling, maybe catching people once they've already gone out of compliance, rather than being more proactive and being able to keep on top of your training schedules. And then just from a day-to-day activity, I mean from a health and safety manager standpoint, you're typically lost in maybe endless filing cabinets or spreadsheets and trying to track down information that can be very, very difficult to get your hands on. So when an event does occur, so maybe an incident or an accident on site, it can be very hard to actually prove the duty of care, even though you know that the company has done their best abilities to train this individual. It can be very hard to prove because maybe those training certificates or records aren't there quick and available to yourself. And so with the scattered information that this can create, this information may be being held at different site-by-site bases or department-by-department basis. What that really creates for yourself is maybe a little lack of oversight from the top levels. So again, your certificates can be difficult to locate, but more importantly, Excel spreadsheets and paper, they're not the most secure way of storing data. So one couple of keystrokes wrong and someone may have accidentally deleted a whole bunch of your training information. So the idea would be is how can a system help you retain that information in a very secure way. So first and foremost, how we would address that with the scattering of information would be obviously having a centralized health and safety platform. So as you can see here, we'll have a number of different categories that you can break your training modules out into. And what that really means is that you have one location throughout the business that is protected and secure, and that everyone can access a range of different training records, or you can segment that to managers only should you choose. But the idea being that really all it takes is a couple of clicks and you have a visual matrix that comes up for yourself that shows you right clearly and easily who is compliant, who is scheduled for their training, and who is out of compliance.
Mandy,
so what this will,
I have the first question. The first question's after coming in.
Yeah.
I have a question. Like, so one of our attendees has said that they have hundreds of departments in their actual organization. They're kind of looking at the kind of way, how can they actually identify what department they're going to be? Is there ability to kind of filter through any department or to see what training records are there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, apologies. So basically what someone would be able to do is the system is completely configurable. So ideally what we would do in the customer success aspect of the webinar is be able to kind of frame the context of how you want to track your information and how best is going to suit your business. And how we would do that is we would actually create a number of different filters or departments that make sense for your business language. So they're completely open, and essentially what that would do is mean that you can then filter out to very specific departments within different sites, or really anything even up to job titles, managers, their shifts that they're working on, that sort of a thing. So it would really just be a matter of tailoring exactly to what the client needs.
Cool. Thank you very much. I think keep bringing your questions. Myself and Mandy will be able to take any of your queries. So apologies. Just keep going, Mandy. You're doing great.
Perfect. And let me just go to the next one here. Sorry, just having a bit of a struggle. Apologies here, just 1 second. Sorry lads, my presentation format doesn't seem to want to go too easily for me today. And so then we go into obviously the being able to record all of your training records in one specific location. So an employee will have a profile just like anyone else in the business, and what they'll be actually able to do is, as a manager there, you'll be able to see all of their training certificates that they have up there, and really anywhere that you see this little PDF icon, you can download the certificate. So you'll be able, so if you're putting together a report or some sort of analysis, you can download this right to your desktop, your laptop, your tablet, what have you, and all of those will be accessible. As you can see on the top there, the training can also be segmented out for specific risk assessments, but basically just giving you a very clear overview to exactly what you need from this particular system.
Perfect. I got another question just in there. Just a quick one. Is it I've a customer, I've attendee here who just has loads of redundant employee records that from past employees. How does the system track that?
Perfect. So what we would do is we would have an archive. So when someone actually leaves the system, they would be moved into our ex-employee archive. So essentially what that means is that all of their information just gets populated into another area of the system. So you don't see them on a day-to-day basis. They won't populate on your employee list for current employees. But what it means that if you have say a historical claim that arises years after this person has left the business, what you'll actually be able to do is pull all of that information forward as if they were working there the day before.
Perfect.
So obviously all of this could feed into a certain lack of confidence, which is a pain that we hear time and time again from people that are managing their certifications. They don't know exactly who is compliant, or if they are going to find out who is, it might take them, you know, hours upon hours or days searching through these more manual processes. So it can be hard to keep on top of that information. Obviously, we're only human. It can be hard to make sure that you're keeping on top of all of the schedules. And then as well for yourself, maybe as a health and safety manager, as an operations manager, it's really not the best value to your time. So what we want to be able to do is take you away from the swimming through Excel spreadsheets and give you a little bit more resources so that you can spend your time in the things that really make sense for yourself. So how we would do that is, again, just using these very visual and easy to use matrices. So within the compliance register, you'd actually be able to see on a module by module basis or by a health and safety group, so whether it be your inductions or your environmental training or your health and safety training, you'd be able to see very quickly and easily what areas actually need your attention. So as you can see here, maybe your manual handling, you've got a number that aren't actually compliant right now, flagging up as red obviously, so it's going to tell you pretty quickly and easily that that's probably where your attention would be best spent.
Yep.
Now this,
Sorry,
Oh,
Maddie.
sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, another question. I have another question. So we've got a question from an attendee who has a number. He actually works in a warehouse, and
Yep.
he's a number of people who don't actually have access to a company mail. How are they able to actually access that notification that they actually need training?
Okay. So easily one of the things that they'd be able to do is basically just segment, and you'll see a screenshot here later in the presentation actually. So we hear this a lot with manufacturers or logistics companies, is that a lot of on-the-ground employees wouldn't be accessing a company email on frequency. So getting email notifications about when you're nearing compliance or out of compliance rather can be tricky. So we actually have a setting in the system that will enable you to tailor who actually receives what notifications. So more often than not in those situations, a manager or someone overseeing that employee would get the notification that they're nearing due for their training, and then that would be able to obviously filter on upwards and make sure that they get them scheduled.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
No trouble. So again, as you saw with the matrix there before, risk training compliance. So this is another area that we can actually track against, would be your specific risk assessments. So you'd be able to see very quickly and easily who's been trained in specific risks within their organization, and obviously which areas maybe you need to just spend a bit more time, some coaching, some mentoring, what have you. So very similar to the training matrix that would be going on with our health and safety training, you can track against all your risk assessments as well. And then obviously this will filter into an integration with the instance and accidents module. So one of the biggest things we hear is that when an incident or accident occurs, one of the first steps that a health and safety manager will do will be to determine was this person properly trained on the tasks that they were doing. So the system will automatically populate any training information that they have in the background with all of the compliance dates, so it'll flag up in your red, amber, green, and that will give you a very quick and immediate ability to understand, was this incident maybe related to a lack of training, or was this to do with something else entirely. So it's just giving you that power and that confidence in information and being able to stay on top of things in a little bit more proactive sense. And then finally, that lost time in admin. So we've talked about it a fair bit through the demonstration here, but obviously if you have to pull a report to say who is compliant within the organization, can be very, very struggle or time consuming, as well as then being able to manually manage all of the scheduling and refresher dates. Typically there are things that will fall through the cracks. So the idea being that a centralized system will aid you with the likes of the email notifications that we spoke to there earlier, and basically just being able to help you spend more time on the things that are truly important. So one of the ways we would do this obviously would be through comprehensive reporting. So a dashboard can be created to reflect essentially any of the reporting structures that you need. So maybe your status by department, maybe status by job title, what have you, and you basically be able to drill down into that information on a very specific level. So whether it be a department within a site or from a company-wide perspective. And what this can also feed into is obviously being able to report on the costs that you're spending for your training. So a little bit of the cost containment aspect of it, or as well forecasting for your budgets years ahead. So then finally, when we look at all of this, what we'll be looking at would be basically proving your duty of care, being able to understand all of the regulatory aspects for yourself, so far as your financial, your legal obligations, but more importantly, basically the commitment to your employees, that you're going to be able to give them a safe working environment and make them feel that they are getting the training that they need to perform the tasks on the basis that they do. So I know that's a very quick and brief overview, but our goal here was to wrap up about 15 minutes after the webinar there. So if there are any other questions, Dave?
Yeah, I think there is. There is. What I want to say is just keep sending me any of your questions and that any of the content that's been brought up today. If there's anything that you need to just run through in the system, just bring it up, and then we'll be able to run through it with myself or Mandy. And one question that we actually have is, it's around online training. Is there any way you can provide online training systems within the software?
That's a question actually we get asked a fair bit. So the standard answer for ourselves is that we are more of a tracking, managing, and recording tool. So what we do is we don't actually offer, say, an e-learning platform where you can host a video and you can then test the individuals on that particular video and what have you, right within the effective system. So what we would typically recommend, and what a lot of our clients do use right now, would be a linkage between an e-learning system like Initiify for maybe contractor inductions, or Learn Upon for your employee learning platforms. And then essentially there is a way that the two systems can speak using an API link. So they'll share information. So if someone was to complete an online induction on Initiify, that information would then populate into the effective system and would convert the red to a green, or your amber to a green, just depending on obviously the results of that exam. So that would be the ideal way that we'd recommend people to integrate e-learning platforms with effective software.
Cool, cool. Thank you very much. Right, I have another question. I've got another attendee who has no ability to be able to track costs against any of the training courses that they're providing for their employees. What way can we track that?
Just similar with those reporting methods, we have what we would call a pipeline report. So when you're actually building the training platforms that you want to be tracking through to completion, one of the areas, or the fields rather, that it will ask you will be what's the initial cost of the course, and then what potentially is the refresher cost of the course. Obviously, you know, as time goes on, those costs can be updated, but essentially what the system will do is it will take all of those costs for your different kind of training elements, and then be able to forecast on different training groups and what those costs would look like years ahead based on how many people have attended the course this year, or in the past rather, and how many will require refreshers in the future. And so it's an estimate more than anything else, but it is fairly accurate depending on the information that's put into the system.
Thank you. Cheers, Manny. Thanks for that. I'm conscious of time as well. I know we said that we're getting in between 15 and 20 minutes. I've no other questions. If you do have any more questions, please feel free to just send me on any of your queries, again, that's been brought up today, or that you have any queries on our actual safety system. So what I'm going to say is thank you very much for your attention, and I'll say to Mandy that we are happy to close the webinar.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Cheers. Thank you very much, guys.